Well, welcome back to the session 46, I think. Yeah, I think it is 46. And I apologize. In my last session, I got a little excited. So against my own rule, not to get involved in the politics in the public. I guess in the videos that posted in public because it's not what I really should be doing because no, anyway, I guess I'll just stop there. But let's just say because I mentioned in the last session that now the American politics is all new game with all the new rules defined by certain person, and we see the American press is pretty much at least the mainstream, the traditional media, they're no match for that one powerful person who's actually uh, someone really paying a lot of attention to the traditional mainstream media and could really get excited if the traditional mainstream media in America started talking about him, right? So that's not the traditional democracy I guess we perceive. Supposedly the mainstream media is there to monitor and to make sure everything goes as supposed to be you know along a certain line, so that check and balance is out there. Well, it's certainly not today. That part failed, right? And then we have the American legislature section that is also supposed to be in its relationship to the executive branch, supposed to be a part of the check and balance. Is that working? You tell me. So apparently, the American politics is entirely in a new era today, and I am just amazed how much the personal charm can work in American contemporary politics today. I mean, let's think about it. The Chinese communists are supposed to be very good in political propaganda, right? When was the last time you saw any any Chinese politician actually just give a great speech, off the script, anywhere, anytime, like the American politicians are so professionally skilled, seasoned, you know, could deliver. You get any American politician, and if you talk to them privately, that's one thing. But if you see them giving a speech that is so, uh, you know, perfect. I mean, you sit there and you think, oh wow, how much have I learned today? It is so enlightening. But hey, I guess it's not about what you hear, how people talk. It's you watch them, how they walk, right? So that's why I don't know if American politics are working today to maintain the perfect capitalism system, the American democracy that this country is so busy, or has been so busy trying to export this model. And of course, rightfully, the Chinese are challenging the Americans. Hey, you guys are talking about all this democracy and blah blah blah. Uh, well, I guess I don't want to go down that route, and I'll leave that. I'll just leave it there. But the point is, what is the standard? Okay, let's say for Americans or for the Europeans, and who is the Europeans? Now this gets interesting. Do you think the Germans and French, they actually see eye to eye on everything in Europe? Or about America? I don't know about that. What about the Italians, right? And then what about the, now the British are out of the EU, and they have their own view sitting on the islands. away from the continent, but or you know among the Asian countries. So what's really interesting? Let's talk about a little bit about Asian countries, right? For the economies, the consideration out of their own economies, they don't want to develop a hard line against China, right? So they want to work with China. But then they seem to have somewhat, security concerns. So that gives them the motivation to, play along with the Americans, whoever's in the White House. So that is probably some kind of check and balance, towards the Chinese, because they probably feel, I'm just guessing because I don't know anything about Asian politics, but probably they could try to maintain a little sense of security there, right? If the Americans are really gonna come out and help them at their rescue whenever they're needed, towards the perceived threat. Does that work? How does that work? You think the Chinese could actually separate this? Oh, okay. So I understand. You can, basically get me to invest my Chinese money into your economy and work with you and let you, do really well for yourself. But then in the meantime, you are working with Americans against my strategic interests. I don't know how that works. But it's very interesting to see how it goes and how it develops, But then we look at the European countries, right? On one hand, you see our sitting president play little trade war against equally. I mean, the guy's really fair. He doesn't just do this against the Chinese. He, pulled that thing was, whoever he against whoever he selected. A different timing, and basically he was cheered on by a bunch of American politicians, business leaders, for let's say sometime against the French, sometime against the German, and that could also apply to the Japanese. Well, that obviously wouldn't work with the American military people, because hey, we need our allies, right? Or do we just fight alone every time, all the time, against everybody? We declare war, economic war against everybody at the same time. And then all of a sudden we come back and say, hey, I need you to work with me against the Chinese in China. Okay? Do you think the Europeans can take that really well? I don't know about that. So I guess this is a very interesting times for the Americans. It is only interesting today, but God knows how long before it's more than interesting. Whatever it's gonna develop into, I am basically very concerned, watching the trend of the development in America, especially what's going on in Washington, D.C., and how does that impact on all the social groups, regardless the ethnic group. And I really, once again, I mentioned before, but having taught in a, I guess, somewhat American university or education institution that is not a top, institution, what I saw was completely a fact of colorblind. Those disadvantaged people, okay, a big, I guess, proportion of my class, they were equally disadvantaged. It didn't make much difference at all, if any, among the Latin American and the white American, Black American, and yellow or Asian American. Okay? When you're disadvantaged, you're disadvantaged. A lot of it first was because the way, you were exposed when you were young by your parents. And then, you went into education at the elementary level, and then the middle school and the high school. It actually make a lot of difference. By the time they're ending up in high education, where I got a chance to see them, the mindset is already basically shaped in a certain way. Okay, so I believe if any nation, doesn't have to be American, and any nation want to get ahead, education is very important. And I also think the mindset is the top quality to measure any education system or program. So when you have the people who are pretty much ignorant, okay, so regardless what kind of knowledge that you transferred uh, in your high education programs or skill set you offered, it does not really offer the sort of the favorite American buzzword leadership. No, it doesn't, because the ignorance does not really lead you to the leadership position, except for in well, I'm not gonna get in there. I don't want to personally offend anyone, but as an industry, right? You see the new technology industry, the founders of a lot of the IT enterprises, the great ones, many of them did not even finish their undergraduate degree. What does that say, about education? And then, obviously, we have a lot of R&D talents in the IT business. Actually, came out from the top education system. And what does that say about the contemporary education programs in America? And then we see a lot of folks could not land great jobs from certain category of high education institutions. So what does that say about the quality of contemporary American, high education programs that are not in the top tier of the education institutions? This is the standard we're talking about. I personally hope is colorblind. Okay, apply to all groups in this nation, at least regardless whatever the international education program that the institutions offer to for the sake of the revenue of tuitions, but for the domestic students, whatever the graduate coming out of whatever the program designed, I would like to see the standards strategically developed, to follow the certain vision that actually would put America great again. America first. That's the real deal as far as I'm concerned. But what do I see in America that is supposed to be great again, or America first? You would see, okay, don't take my words for it, but you would see the pre-K, education, or actually the kinder. They not the kindergarten American elementary, but that I guess kinder care. The teachers are making their basically around the minimum wage, so they work 2 to 3 jobs to stay, I guess, afloat, or even just merely survive. And then you think about it, this is where the kids, or at least in this case American kids, their mindset are being exposed to certain things. But if you reduce this kind of programs to just a babysitting, I don't know how that compare to the Asian kids in Japan, in Korea, in China, in Taiwan. And then the elementary, and then the middle school, and the high school, when you see the teachers going on the strike for the perceivably low salary, right? I really don't know. I don't have, I guess, the credential to give any comments. Maybe their salaries are supposed to be low, but when you compare that salary to the kinder care teachers, those are actually luxuries, in lifestyle. So now, what are we seeing as far as the education? Once again, I was at the high education, and by the time all this, university students, enrolled into certain programs, the mindset already shaped, throughout all this, 12 years education, or actually, if you count on the the K-12 and the pre-K, or the preschool, in the kinder care stage, that's more than 12 years. And I think it's going to require quite a significant program try to reshape the mindset of those students and make them a little more capable for the kind of leadership expected for being, the next generation that make America great again, America first. If and when we are, which is not by itself not important. No, it is important to try to, save the job for the Americans. But if that's the only thing we do, we will see Americans lagging behind other countries. And be it China or whatever other country, it doesn't really matter. Why? Because our education is just, I don't want to use the, I guess, the word out of excitement, but if we want to have this nation really going great again, I don't know, it's going to be the first or second or whatever, but we need to have the, the leader of next generation basically continue to lead the technologies and the science, and our education system is not there for that. And so I believe George W. Bush once said, keep the, I want to find the word that's more political. I don't remember what original words he used, but basically, as I remember what he said was basically to make sure the next generation of Americans are at a certain level, so that, this part, the second part is my own, I guess, comment, so that we don't have to compete against all the countries out there for the minimum wage works. Of course, this, we're talking about a transition over time. For right now, there are a lot of folks, they couldn't even get the, pretty basic jobs in a lot of American states, right? Because I bump into people from time to time, they told me in their hometowns this and that happened, and it sounded so desperate and so bad. So, of course, in the short term, you got to do something for the folks out there. But in the long run, you do want to prevent this, from happening again. This is actually going back to what we talked about a little earlier in the Tao's teaching, that you constantly deal with the, tactical level problems and passing out with the reactive actions, but you don't have the vision to stay steps ahead and to develop somehow, long-term initiative. Well, if all you care is about the 4 years term to be the president of the United States, the long term is not really, your cup of tea, because all you care is you want to leave some, legend behind you. But, after the sitting president pretty much did a very productive work on whatever the legends, left behind, before him, I want to see what's going to be the legend he, leave behind after he's out of a White House. So we'll see what history tells us. I personally believe it's going to repeat. But anyway, that's here and there, really not my concern at all. But this wraps up this session. So until next one, ciao.